Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to BluEdge's webinar on experiential graphics. We're very fortunate today to have three panelists that we've done some recent projects, and each one of these panelists have a very similar task. Their task is to bring interiors to life for their clients. What's nice about this panel, a bunch of panelists, is they've dressed very different types of facilities and very different types of businesses. So who we have on the panelist is Elizabeth Griswold, who is the lead experiential graphic developer for Ewing and Cole. And we have Carolina Vargas, who is the creative director for McCarter Theater in beautiful Princeton, New Jersey. And then we have Dylan Garner. Dylan is an art director that works in commercial advertising, but is also very experienced in interior branding. And we're going to start simply by making the mission statement this. Currently, interiors are being branded and experiential graphics are going in businesses that 10 years ago never were in there. And it's an expanding marketplace. And what we felt at BluEdge was to allow our customers to listen into real experts. These lovely ladies are super creative, very, very bright. And the buildings that they've dressed, which they're going to show you how they go from concept to completion, are very impressive. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth. And Liz, thank you so much for taking the time out today. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, Greg. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and work to share my screen while I'm chatting, so give me one moment. All right, I believe you should be able to see my screen. So as Greg mentioned, I'm a lead experiential graphic designer at Ewing Cole. I've been there for about 5.5 years, but I've been in the business for over 20. And Greg and I recently worked on the Rutgers RASC, or Rodkin Academic Success Center, together. You know, it's interesting in our field of design that not many people have degrees in exactly what we do. We might come from an exhibit degree, a graphic design degree, architecture, or interior design, but there's really not too many degrees in EGD. So a lot of us are really kind of learning either through co-ops or through work on the job. And so it's always an interesting story to hear where people came from. So just a little tidbit that's interesting about our field. So for the Rutgers project, really quickly, it was a design build project with a group called Natoli. It's an 80,000 square foot building. It serves about 700 students, and it's a training facility for men's and women's soccer and lacrosse, but it also offers a lot of academic support services, and it also offers offices for the entire athletic faculty and staff. So there are a lot of partners and a lot of user groups that are using this, and they all have different kind of goals and needs for the space, and that's something that we're tasked with, is to create a cohesive, integrated space that fits all the needs for recruiting, for students, for academia, to showcase Rutgers as a first-class facility, and then, of course, offering the, day-to-day support services with regards to training, athletics, and academia. So overall project goals, which we had to hit from an architectural standpoint, because Ewing Cole is an architecture, engineering, interior design, and EGD firm. So we did the entire building with the Natoli team. So these are our top ones. We really needed to transform Rutgers to set that standard, create innovative learning environments, creating best in practice places, and flexible for future growth. And then most importantly, especially to me, is defining that sense of place. This is the exterior of the building, and there's a couple EGD moments here, but really the guts of it happens inside. So we're going to look at 3 floor plans. It's a 3-story building, and everything you see here are all moments to tell the story about Rutgers. So these are all experiential graphic design moments, whether it's a painted stripe on a wall or a logo or a big integrated panel. So you can see there are a lot of opportunities that we integrated throughout. So the first floor is mainly for the athletes. There's a lot of action happening down here. This is where the training facilities are and the locker rooms. The middle floor is more academia, so it's way more subdued. And then the top floor incorporates a little bit of athletes' spaces for the film room, which is where they're going to be studying films and maybe recruiting some athletes, but it's mainly for the coaches. This is a view of the main entry lobby, and what's nice about this project and many of our projects is everything is fully integrated, so it doesn't look like things are plunked on a wall. It was all developed with this sense of place to make sure everything feels like it was all intentional, and it was designed by the same team or group of people, so it's not like somebody came in after the fact. So we have a couple moments where we have some dimensional elements paired with some cut dimensional vinyl or digitally printed vinyl. Here are some quick drawings or 2D elevations that we developed with some design intent. So we pulled in some 3-dimensional letters paired with digitally printed films and die-cut films. And that was something we really had to work with Greg and his team on, is to understand how can we make the paint from the dimensional letters match the digitally printed films that are, made out of CMYK, and we're trying to hit all these different grays as well as the Rutgers red. So this is a view of the final piece installed. It's fantastic. What's really nice here is this kind of serendipitous placement of Scarlet Knights in the room beyond. You really kind of get the sense of place, seeing all the mission and vision words for the program, both from an athletics and academia standpoint. But as we take this red line and wrap around into this corridor, we're going to really open up to where we add some moments of power and strength for those athletes. I forgot that I had added this slide in. This is a little detail of the word wall where you can see the dimensional letters paired with the vinyl. This is not a color corrected photo. I need to fix the colors on it. This is from my iPhone. So these grays actually do match in person. My iPhone photo is not showing it matching so well. But what's nice about this is it creates different levels and planes and textures. So as I mentioned, that one red line kind of carries you through the space, and this is where we start to activate that experience for the athletes. We have some big logos, big iconography, and words for the training corridor. And on the other side, we kind of have like a hall of fame. So these dimensional panels that BluEdge helped us create are digitally printed graphics applied to a rigid substrate. The goal here was to make it feel timeless. So we're using grayscale images as well as a Rutgers gray and a Rutgers red. But what our biggest challenge was is really tying in all the different materials with all the different colors. A wall covering that's textured is going to look a little bit different when it's printed red versus a paint or versus a 3M film or versus a direct digitally printed graphic. So that's something we really honed in with. And it's so important to have a fabricator that really understands color, can speak the language, knows how to tweak it on their end, and they understand your goals and vision for the output. So this is a view of the panel in finished state. It's a huge panel. It's like 7 feet tall, so it's larger than life. So it really creates this sense of achievement and grandioso, if you will, for these athletes, saying like, you could be the next Carly Lloyd, you could be an Olympic athlete, you can be a professional athlete, and you could also donate back to your community. So these panels are changeable. They're just mounted with a Z-clip, so they can easily change out, but they have that substance and feel of a permanent piece. When we're developing this artwork and the whole overall scheme of the brand, again, we wanted to activate the graphics for the athletes down low on the lower level. So we studied the Rutgers chainmail brand. So this is their standard pattern, but how can we re-envision a typical chainmail but still make it feel like Rutgers? It could be literal chainmail. It could be a deconstructed chainmail, and just looking at some of the different geometric forms and shapes. And then also looking at the positives and negatives of the space. Maybe we incorporate some gradations, pull in darker shades of red, because if you go light, you go pink. So you kind of have to go dark if you want variations of red. So red is a very challenging color to work with. So we also went from the traditional chainmail to something maybe more unique. So this one was really trying to speak to the two sports that were utilizing the space, soccer and lacrosse, and pulling in those geometric forms that were consistent between the two sports. So this was a study. It ended up wanting to go back to the original chainmail, but it was a good study to showcase to the clients of the different opportunities from a graphic standpoint. The red is really hard to match, and so we're pushing through with Greg multiple copies. Again, the way light reflects off of that can change the reds, and so that was something we really had to hone in on, and we appreciate all of these samples, and there were a lot. There's probably like 15 samples of red, but that red sometimes went purple or blue or brown, and so we really had to hone in on the right amount of CMYK to hit those matches. So we took that pattern, made it huge, large scale on the graphics. We took some of these color photos for inspiration and turned them into illustrations, as you see here on the left. So we have these wall coverings with some dimensional panels. And so the finished state today is here. It's very powerful. As the athletes turn down this corridor, they are seeing this beautiful bold color. It's reminding you of where you need to go within the space. Within the locker rooms themselves, we did a little different take, took it more of a grayscale option. We, again, had to do some color samples to understand how it would all work out. And we took the same theme, but took actual black and white photos as opposed to illustrations. And we had to create 4 different looks, all with the same style and same theme, but different words, different messages, different boldness, different photography. Sometimes this coaches wanted it on history versus present day. So we really had to be creative in how we developed that artwork. But as you can see, as we go through all the locker rooms, they're consistent look throughout, even though the messaging is different. But again, we had to hone in on the colors. So we have digitally printed red here that has up lights on it. We have painted red graphics here, and we have internally illuminated signs up above. So Greg's team worked very diligently to help us ensure that our reds were going to match across all the different materials and methodologies. And it was really fun seeing the student athletes reactions when they walked into the space. They had the videos on Instagram, and it just gave me goosebumps seeing their pure reactions of joy, screaming and saying, "This is fantastic. It's so much better than what we ever imagined." So that makes you know that you have hit a home run. It has been successful, not only for the staff and the coaches and for the donors, but really for the end user group, the athletes. Another time when we had to really deal with color was when we were doing some really subdued graphics up on the 3rd level. So this is at the coaches level. We wanted it to feel more sophisticated, a little bit more pulled back from that rah, spoon ba kind of thing. And so, yes, we could implement these verticals with paint, but we chose to do a wall covering to make it feel a little bit classier and a little bit more high end. But again, grays are really hard to match. So we worked with Greg again. I said, here are my Pantone colors I'm trying to match. Here are the paint colors I'm trying to match. And Greg said, okay, really, I need to work up the paint colors because Pantone grays are really challenging. So he went ahead and scanned in those paint colors and came up with this huge sheet, which you can see has been well loved. It's probably 4 feet by 3 feet. And I basically had to pick all my shades of gray. And the ones I picked are the ones that are cut out. But this was so important to me because if you saw this in person, you would see some of these grays as brown, some of them as green, some of them as yellow, some of them as blue, some of them as perfectly gray. And it's all in the eye of the beholder, but it's also like depending on the light. Is it hanging on the wall? Is it on the floor? So we appreciated this. This really cut down our decision making super fast because we were able to pick which grays we wanted. So Greg's team could go ahead and put those numbers in to the system for his printer system. And the finished product is this beautiful shade of gray, really simple wall pattern that comes all the way down. We have it superimposed with some museum quality framed image graphics, which Greg's team also printed the captions as well as the images while we had those professionally framed. And then we took that same look into the film room. This is where they're going to take the students for recruitment, also to review films from the game or to prep for the future game. Again, the focus should be on the front of this room because that's where the TV is, but we wanted to really still show all of the Rutgers graphics. So we had kind of tone on tone, Knights heads and the state of New Jersey logo, but then a bold pop of scarlet red. So this is the overall layout that Greg's team really had to work through on the field dimensions to make sure that the way the steps tiered up and then the way the ceiling came down all worked with the bleed so that the logos were cutting off in the right place and the lines were cutting off in the right place. And this is a finished product. So it's been fun to see this also on Instagram whenever they're showing the athletes reacting to a moment of film or reacting to a celebration. They've been hosting it in here and it's really fun to see them live in the space. But really what draws your eye is the red cloud, the Scarlet Knights and the R's, and then you have the rest of the brand subtly behind you. So Again, this really brings into the importance of understanding the different materials that are being used within the space, maybe the different fabrication partners you have involved, whether it's your print partners, in addition to maybe somebody who's doing some dimensionally internally illuminated signage or painted signage, and making sure all those colors are matching together and having that print partner truly understand color, truly understand why we need the colors to match and why we're being picky, and they're just as picky as we are. That's what I value. Both in Greg and in BluEdge, I've really been blown away, and this is not like an advertisement. I really have been blown away by that partnership because I really feel that they're very knowledgeable when it comes to color and understanding how it reacts to different materials and what your different printers do. Like, I don't understand the printers necessarily, but Greg and his team do. So by collaborating our expertise together, we're going to end up with a gorgeous finished product. And so really my secret sauce is working with those amazing fabrication partners who really understand the color and then communicating that back with the client and showing them what their expectations are and just hearing what the clients want and trying to achieve those goals and circling back often to make sure that, you know, this is really what they were hoping for. This is the beautiful scale, the beautiful, you know, feeling that the whole piece gives them. And I consider it a success just looking at those different Instagram videos, which I'll have to share these links in the chat. But it was a really fun project and I was really excited to work with BluEdge on this effort.
Liz, thank you so much. And I'll just spend 1 second on that. So when I'm pulled into a project in its infancy and you start looking at the deck, you know, there's miles that were walked before that deck was created and handed off to me as a fabricator. And Elizabeth has to work with many masters. There's the architectural group drawing and making a pretty building. There's the marketing group at Rutgers. There's the athletic director. Then each coach has its own little say. And then they kind of purge all these legacy photos and resolution from, you know, beautiful to something shot in the 1940s. And as a designer, she has to kind of grab it all and make it feel, you know, all uniformed in a very big space. So Liz works on larger venues, sporting and institutions like colleges and arenas. And what I found when I got that deck, it was very meticulous. So most of the material selection she already knew. And what she needed really a partnership with is these branded colors. They were tough. When we see grays as a manufacturer, as a printer, well, that's one of the hardest ones to do because they want to move. You know, what's a good gray? Well, the gray that you like. And if I can make, you know, 20,000 square feet of it on wall coverings, both, you know, pressure sensitive vinyl and actual wallpaper, well, that's my job. My job is to have consistent goods beyond property, because once it's applied, it's up there for life. It's not rotated out in a month. It's not really traditional marketing materials that we're printing. These are a little bit different. And what I found really, really refreshing with Liz was she appreciated that hand-holding. We started in a very different space because the original grays that were communicated, I knew for a fact I could not keep consistent. Cool grays, all those numbers 1 through 11, give us fits in CMYK. And she was nice enough to listen to my printer's ease, kind of saying, hey, I wanted these, you know, Benjamin Moore chips anyway. Great, send them to me. We'll scan them. We'll make drawdowns. You pick what you want. It'll be consistent throughout the building. That's where our partnership yielded added value. Wonderfully done, Liz. Thank you very much. Hang around for a question. And folks listening, in our chat box is going to be a link to what Liz was talking about. And I just want to speak about it for a second. I very rarely get to see the end user enjoying the experiential graphics I make. I get to see executives and stakeholders and ribbon cutting, but the student athletes seeing their homes for the first time, it did give me goosebumps as well. That's one of the more prideful feelings I've had over printed goods in a long while. And that was because it impacted those young athletes. And that's hard for them because they have very hard lives those 4 years. Division I athletes, school, this, that, ton of pressure. those rooms that they're going to be spending a ton of time in, they were home. And it was home for them the first 30 seconds they saw it. Beautiful building, Liz. Thank you so much. So I'm going now to introduce Carolina. Carolina is, again, in charge of the decor for her theater, but it's entertainment, and that comes with its own pain. So Carolina, take us through your thought process, and thank you again.
Thank you. Hi, I'm so happy to be here today. As Greg mentioned, I work at McCarter Theater Center, and I am here today to show you just a couple of works that I have done during the last year. I've been at McCarter working for a couple of years, and I will say that one of the first assignments that I started working on when I started at McCarter was just about the lobby renovation that we did back in 2019. So when I started working there, they told me about this area. As can you see, you can I have a couple of photos here, and this is a very high traffic area, and yeah, a lot of people, we used to have two monitors, and on the right photo you can see what we used to have before. When I got hired, they told me that they really wanted to, when they just saw my portfolio, they told me that they really wanted my fresh look of designs to be incorporated into the McCarter new identity. So I've been working with them just to make sure that we're doing that transition for something a little bit more institutional to something a little bit more artistic, vibrant. When I have this assignment, I met with Riley from BluEdge, and I told her, you have to come here. We need to explore what are our ideas, what options do we have. So when she come with us, she brought a lot of samples. And I was like telling her, I like the banner idea, but we definitely need to improve the quality of the material. I don't like that vinyl. We need something a little bit more high end because we're dealing with a lot of patrons. Like, I mean, we have like around 60% shows a year plus the plays, plus the productions, original productions that we have at McCarter. So I was like telling her we need to change this. She brought at that moment like a SEG frame that is a metal frame with a customized fabric, and I was so in love with that sample that I was like telling her, you know what? Let me explore some concepts. Probably what we can do is just have like a graphic for each show, each production, and maybe something evergreen for the presented shows. So I one of the parts of the process was like showing to the marketing director how this can look like the potential of the graphics. I was working as well with front of house and patron experience because I was like telling them like this is not just a graphic. You have to complement the experience with other resources, either the music, or if we want to put a pop-up bar in the lobby, that would be great. So on the image above, you can see that what was the mock-up and what helped us visualize. And on the lower photos, you can see how actually the space was used. Like we had such a grateful opening night for Frankenstein. I have other examples here. We have, this was the design for A Christmas Carol, and other photos. So I think like definitely understanding the limitations of the materials, it is really important, as well the needs. We needed something nice, we needed something flexible and be able to change. Sometimes even that fabric but has to be changed like couple of times a week because we have certain shows on a day and certain plays in another day. So like being clear with your vendors about that, it's definitely going to help you to have or to make the best decisions about whatever you need to design or whatever you need to invest on. Another example that I would like to talk, it is a recently outdoor campaign. So this is actually what a screenshot from the newspaper, a local newspaper that we got featured on. And I will say that we were really, really happy about that because as can you see on the tagline, a sign outside of McCarter Theater usually used to promote upcoming shows offers an optimistic view. That was the goal of this campaign. The goal of this campaign was to connect with our patrons, with the community, and tell them, we're working on us, we're here, and we're getting ready to welcome you back. But how you can convey those that message with not only a tagline or a title, but as well with a graphic. So we were thinking about like just using vibrant colors, something different that we haven't done before. We were like, this is or renew, this is a renovation. We have to become strong and come back strong for everyone. So we went and we checked a couple of colors, different font selections, different font combinations even, and we just made a perfect curation on the images because we want to make sure that our EDIA values were present in our graphics. I'm just gonna show a couple of photos about like how was the proofing process for us, like putting detail and putting attention in those minimal details like font. That makes a huge difference. Like, and sometimes as a designer, as a visual designer, we know that certain options are not going to work because we are so used to work with X or Y font. But showing even our team about like those not possible font combinations or color combination, it helps you to move away from that direction, or helps the team, the rest of the team, to say, you know, this is not going to work. Let's explore these ideas. On the right, you can see all the possible color combinations that we were working on because I just wanted to make sure that they envision the full concept at that moment. At this stage, the project was not finished yet, but we were like kind of close about like the font use and the color. On the next slide, I have like what is a presentation. So we of course have our weekly marketing check-ins, and at that moment, I was just ready to show them the potential of the graphics. I was like telling them, you know, we're gonna go with all this. This is what we need to launch the campaign, and we were just creating some assets for the gazebo. And those, I have to mention that those posters are quite big. We had other university cases outside of the theater, Matthew's cases as well outside of the theater. And I will say that one of the challenges here, it is just to make sure that your materials are flexible enough that because I must say that this campaign started back in February. So we were over the winter and with the snow, with lower temperatures. And right now we're in the summer. The artwork is still up, and we have to make sure that the material it is resistant enough for the different needs, and especially when it's directly exposed to the to the exterior, right? In this case, we are kind of safe because this is protected by a case, so we were not that worried. However, you have to be careful about the properties of the material just to make sure everything is going to work well. And that's something that you have to rely on your vendors. Is either that you already have worked with them for a couple of years and you know that you can trust them, you can trust in their suggestions, or if not, like taking the time to make sure that what they are offering is going to work. On the next slide, I'm going to show you something that we recently did as well as part of this campaign. So we launched as well a series of outdoor concerts. Those are actually still happening right now. And we had a location in town just to show part of the concerts. And we had this window, and I was just like so excited to work on this project. And as can you see on the left side of the slide, I have this image, and this image it is actually pretty good to prove that text contact, prove that imagery, but you cannot imagine how this is gonna look like. And one of the most important things in design, and at least at McCarter, it is just for me to help the rest of the team, the rest of the department, and other departments to understand how this is going to look like. And not only because certain projects require a higher budget, but also just to make sure that this is going to work. And maybe as well to cause this expectation about the materials. So on the right, you can see the mock-up, and I'm just going to show the last photo that this is how actually it looks like. I remember that when the installer was here, I had certain concerns about like the frame of the window, because the frame of the window didn't have like has certain textures around the edges, and I was like a little concerned about. And even the managing director, he was like, "Hey, what about like a kid just peel off the material?" So I went back to Riley and I was like telling her like, And you assured me that this is going to work. That as well, one more time, this was set up back in March. It was a little cold, and I was like telling her probably this is going to stay here for a couple of months, 4 or 5 months. And she was like, don't worry at all, I got you covered. This is going to work, and this is going to look great. So I will say that's our secret sauce back in McCarter. Try to research as much as possible whenever you have a project. Like, just try to treat it like the most important project, and make sure you are doing all the tests, all the all the possibilities as visuals, just to make sure you are covering up the details. And if you have to go back and forth with your team until you have something ready, that's okay. That's part of the process. I understand that all the designers that are seeing us, they understand me pretty well. So yes, that's my work on McCarter, and thank you.
That was wonderful. Again, different challenges from Liz, but again, dressing a venue is specific to that business and what that interior is trying to do. And a college university trying to recruit and raise money from alumni is going to be very different than a theater. But if you notice, the ladies' process seems similar, okay? And what they do as designers starts off in the same place. How to execute it gets very different. And what they're dressing are very different, but both start with the same thing. What does this need to communicate, and where are we going to tie in the company's values or the show's, theme? What I found to be challenging with entertainment is there is a lot of cooks in that kitchen. That's a very artistically driven kind of platform, and you have a lot of folks in there. Most shows have their own art director, and they want to, stage directors and this kind of stuff, and then the talent themselves. You're going to post talent in headshots and positions. That requirement isn't for the faint of heart. Color is very important to that. You do not want folks seeing their image reproduced where it's not as good as the photo they hand out. That becomes an issue. Very well done, and I thank you a lot. We are having a small technical snafu, and our last presenter, Dylan, hopefully is on here. Yana, do you know if Dylan was able to connect voice?
Yes, we're good. She's here. Dylan, you want to say hi to our audience?
Okay, so I want to introduce Dylan real quick. Dylan and I, along with major support from Ryan Yokas out of the Philly office, we wound up doing the interiors on a high-end eatery, an eatery that was to mimic the Italy, where it is not a traditional restaurant. It's more of an experience. So I'm going to let Dylan describe her process, and then we'll jump back on for questions. Please put them in the live Q&A when you think of a good one. Dylan, welcome, and thank you for hanging in there and logging on. That's a lot of stick-to-itiveness. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hey, no problem at all, Greg. Thank you so much for the introduction. And it's exciting to be a part of such an amazing panel, getting such a diverse look at how signage can create a brand experience and interior. My name is Dylan Garner. I am meaning that, am able to create a vision with a client, employ that vision through design, and then ensure that that is carried consistently throughout any kind of piece, whether that's collateral, interior. Some of those are the main things that I touch. So today we're going to talk about a newly designed and launched retailer for DeBruno Brothers. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to give us all just a quick background in case we're not all from Philadelphia or grew up in South Philly. So if you have, you're probably familiar with the DeBruno Brothers. They're a specialty food retailer, deeming themselves culinary pioneers, meaning that they discover rare and incredibly delicious cheeses, meats, snacks, spreads, pastas from all around the world. And they bring that to their stores and or online retailer to share with the world. So this is an 80-year-old company started by two immigrant brothers that came here for the American dream. And they first opened their first place, which they called their House of Cheese, in Philly's South Italian market. So just kind of a little background on some of where the goals are coming from and what we were looking to do. On this page, it's outlining our goals. So we wanted to transform an 8,000 square foot property into an Italian culinary destination. We wanted to make sure that we were, housing and bringing the true experience of all the best retail shops and places that we have into one. And then, of course, create the best destination that we've had for over the past 80 years. So these are some of the items that we were looking to achieve as we created the new brand experience from signage, interior design, and those kind of points. Me and my team always love to start with mood boarding, so creating a visual design direction. For us, to preserve that 80-year legacy, it was important that we look back to the past. So though we couldn't maybe travel to all these places, we did take a good deep dive into the internet. And even some of our past kind of excursions that we had to really get inspired. So here's typography, color palette, even materiality to help us create what would then become signage or some of the experiential experience within the store. We also wanted to look at materiality and different ways in which we might hang things or hardware that would be used. Greg may have mentioned that a lot of times as designers, we're starting with just floor plans, elevations, and plans. So we begin to get our mind thinking on, how could we best use the space? Where do signs naturally go? And how will that look and feel? So here's just a sense of where we are headed from on materiality. So I mentioned that this would be our best of all stores. Here's a plan layout of the different departments and counters and experiences that we have. So as you enter from the left-hand side there, you see that big purple area. This to us is what we call our crown jewel, our part of the store. The front of it was going to be is a lounge area where you can eat, drink, enjoy any kind of the products and dishes from the wine bar. Around that crown jewel is our House of Cheese formaggio shop. Our caviar is in the back, and then we have our meats and salumi on the back end side. The orange, and as you go on like the perimeter of the side, that was going to be your typical marketplace. We try to stay away from grocery because we think of ourselves as, premier products and premier experiences around this marketplace. And then you have the prepared foods, which you can see on the pink hand side, our beer and wine cave, and then our newest addition, which is a cafe, which we call Cafe de Bruno. You'll see more about that as we go through the slides. I mentioned that the crown jewel was the heart of the store. So this is where we kind of started all of our design decision making. We had these beautiful kind of lit boxes, which you'll see that Bar Elementary is sitting on top of. That was adorned with like amazing metals and high-end finishes. So for us and talking with the BluEdge team, we really wanted to be a little bit more subtle with our approach to this signage. A big rule at De Bruno is that the product and the people are the star. So taking that into account, making sure that we weren't overdoing any of our design choices here and just really kind of accentuating what's already there. So this will be three-dimensional lettering that you'll see on these next few pages, all having their own little identity by using different color and different typefaces to create a custom feel to each section of this crown jewel. So here we are giving a sense of the entire store, a little bit of scale here. The crown jewel's in the center, so you can still see Bar Elementary lit up in the back there. You can see how there's a marketplace feel right as you walk in. If we were to go to the right, this is us going around that perimeter that we had just saw in the drawing. And as we'll kind of take that journey together as we go through some of these slides. Here's a close-up of Bar Elementary. So this is our wine bar at De Bruno that has not only wines, but very nice cheese and charcuterie boards, different dishes from salads to paninis to pizza. There's a little bit of something for everybody here. And I mentioned a little bit earlier about, accentuating the details that we had in the interior design finishes. You can see the light box, you can see the mirror finish underneath. That gives a lot of action as you're sitting there. This seat right here is the best seat you can have in the house for really experiencing Bruno, their people, their products, and their sense of place. As we go around the side here, this is our elevated house of cheese. If you recall from that initial board that we looked at, the exterior of all of the storage used to look a lot like a deli. It was key that we wanted to elevate and modernize our look and feel here. So here's the look for Formaggio, a three-dimensional letter. We colored it green as to complement the signage and then the cheeses. And you can also see sort of the product tags and how that was carried on and carried through the consistency and look and feel. This one might be some of, I think, a lot of the team's favorite, prosciutto and salami. We went with red, of course, to just complement the color of the meats and the varieties of meats in the cases. We made sure that we accentuated kind of what else is here, that it's fine, cured meat. So that's the bottom text, even though it's a little small there. But this kind of finishes out the crown jewel and the different counters that you can experiment too. One of my favorite sections of the store, and I would imagine it's Greg and Ryan's too, because we had a lot of challenges with this one. So you can see that there's a wooden armature. So we had a nice rustic kind of platform to show off the signage here and make sure that, again, we're showing off the product and accentuating what's there. We had three sections that we needed to identify: the pan and dolce, which is our bakery; chef's counter, which is our prepared meals, anything from delicious crab cakes to chicken parm to delicious sides. And then our last section of this area, which is rotisseria. This is our roasted meats and veggies. You can tell that there's three different sizes of signs here. I'm sure there's a little unbalanced, and that definitely proved to be a challenge for us as we got into the install and design of these signs. But I'll flip to the next so you can see where we landed. So here is the roasted meat section. What's funny about this is that when we arrived, or when we were planning for these designs, the heat ramps on the left were never there. They're never a part of the plan. They came up last minute, so they were just installed as we were there. So I'm scratching my head. I'm with Greg and our friend installers trying to figure out, okay, where exactly are we going to place this sign? And we found that, actually bringing it lower below that armature really accentuated the design elements that we used for the material here. So this is a Diabond, which has like a metal feel to it. We added some shadowing to the letter, so it almost feels just as embossed as some of those metal signage that you would find for street corners in Italy. So one of those challenges that actually worked out for us, and Chef on the right, giving us some comic relief with the heat lamps as they were there being installed. But honestly, I think a lot of times these challenges produce better solutions. So we're very proud of this section of the store. And here you can see the bakery, the pan and dolce a little bit closer up. Look at all those beautiful breads. It's just overflowing there. So making sure that the signage was subtle enough, but bold enough to not take away from what's already done. Same stuff on the bottom right. Another challenge here is creating a signage moment for the produce section. So these are two mock-ups that we presented. The top one's showing signage for the wayfinding, produce in black, and then creating this barrier to use this backup area as storage. So we wanted to make sure that we had room for anything that might need to be loaded in behind there, that we kept it from being seen. We found that the first action maybe accentuated a little too much. Your eye almost was drawn up there too regularly, and that's not exactly what we wanted to do. So we ended on the bottom section, which I think, Yana, we can go to the next slide. Inspired by, any kind of Italian deli or eatery that I've been in for fine dining, there's always showcasing the family, the story, the legacy of this brand. So we thought there may be a chance here for us to speak to some of that history as the background boards, which in our case, I think distract a little bit from what's behind you. And then also using the wayfinding to showcase what's being used within the fridges. What's nice about this is Greg and Ryan and the BluEdge team, we went back and forth on tons of different solutions for the material to ensure that it was easy to print, flexible to move, but also to use with a finish here that really just plays really well with the lighting in the store. And now we can move these boards to different areas depending on if the beverages move later on down in one of the later fridges. So again, another challenge that I think just helped us put our heads together to create something interesting and also provide a message. One of the newer parts of the stores is Cafe de Bruno. So here's a quick mock of what we were creating together. We imagined that we needed menu boards that really popped off of the cream brick. So we brought in a green, which, gives you that sense of ambition, which, goes perfectly well with coffee, right? Your morning coffee, what better way to send a message of get after it. And then one of our creative moments was how do we suggest what kind of moments do we have here? So we have pastry. We also needed to communicate the wayfinding of to go and pick up. We have these amazing lights that came down from the ceiling, and we were able to vinyl on top of them and use them as wayfinding, which also gave a very nice vintage rustic feel to the overall space. And here's it live. So you get a sense of how it all comes together. I think the green really helps and pops off of the background of that rustic tile. And then if you go to the next one too, here you get a close-up of some of those vinyls and how we use those to create wayfinding, but also accentuate the different items that we sell here. And lastly, just wanted to kind of give you guys all a look at the exterior. We went with a very modern but industrial metal with die cut and backlit from the back. Clean, simple, plays off of the beautiful black window frames. And I think this as a whole really creates this nice glow for the exterior. And lastly, this is our opening night. It's Danny and Joe in the cutout in the middle with a few of our team members, CEO and owners. I think that we can obviously tell that it was such a success by the program that we had from different guests. And that was one of the main goals, was to make sure that Danny and Joe would be proud. So I truly think that they would be.
The only thing better than the way that business looks is the way it smells. You go in there, you feel like you were transported into Tuscany, and that rustic elegance is everywhere. And we were fortunate enough to do most of the positions in there, right into the table toppers that were on wood and silk screened. A lot of dark arts went into fitting out of this eatery. And what I mean by that is old technology. Silk screen, stamped aluminum, things that are not really kind of big factors in digital signage and digital printing anymore, but there's still relevance to that. There's still some ways to do things, even though they're antiquated, work better. That business, the big challenge and most of our partnership was figuring out material but scale. And as Dylan mentioned, we start off with architectural drawings, slides, decks, and as fabricators, that jump off point should lead to questions. It should lead to, what are we trying to do here? And what's the ultimate goal? Do we want to kind of work backwards from a budget and let them drive important positions that can't fall off the plan? This particular plan stood true to her first vision. Where it changed was some of the way we executed it and some size. So what I like to say is all three of these very talented designers fit out spaces for their clients that were very different in size, and the industries they're in were very different. But if you take a look at the work, it's very similar in the look and feel, right? And part of it means, well, they have a really good understanding on how to do experiential. And that kind of is a newer term, but not for these designers. As fabricators, that's a newer term. We've called this type of interior branding a million things in the last 25 years. The formal training now of it, Liz spoke to it real quick. There's not a very linear path. So I found that folks that are really interested in it wind up become really good designers of it. And it's about material selection, and it's really also about taking the pulse of the client and really feeling what they're trying to convey in their business. Anyone could put up, you know, big, beautiful, bold prints, but what's the point? What's the messaging, right? So one was functionality. She built a eatery that was also a bit of a supermarket, so wayfinders were important, and signage and price lists. That's hard for a designer to work around, right? But it needed to be in there. So Dylan, that was a very nice job. And I appreciate you hanging in there and fighting through the technology glitch. I just want to mention real quick, Yana behind the scenes. She's been wonderful in all this, holding our hands. And as an old man challenged with technology, without her, we wouldn't have had our third presenter. So thank you, Yana, and thank you, Dylan. We're going to open up to some questions. So we kind of want to go and ask our audience a question, grab their questions and ask them. And I'm going to go and make it specific to the panelists based on what I'm reading here. Carolina, this seems like a one that would be really good because it deals with entertainment. Speed to market, okay? Dealing with the folks that go into the decision making, meaning you make a beautiful deck. You said something interesting. You said that even concepts that you don't love the best, you include in there. We do that as manufacturers too at times. I'll tell folks, hey, I don't like that print. Please make these corrections and run it again. And then I'll take the one that I like and get ready to stick it in a tube and FedEx it out to a designer. But I'll tell my folks there, hey, take the two I didn't like and put them in the tube and mark them previous and just tell them what I did to make my new one. They'll understand my language. And they'll say, hey, why do you want to do that? Because I don't know if I'm right. And it's really the audience. It's really, hey, I don't think you're going to love this, but I included it anyway. Here's my recommend, but take a look. You mentioned that. Describe some of that when you kind of kill them with kindness and show them not what your recommend is, but in totality.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I think that was one of the important process because first of all, we want to share all the possibilities, like the ones that work and the ones that do not work that well, right? Just to as well make clear that we are covering everything up, like all the possibilities, and finally, just because let's say that they are envisioning a different material or a different color. But if you already work on that in your mind, you're just showing up that option ahead, and that will just to evidence the part of the proofing process. Like you're just seeing like the refined version, but behind that version are 20 printed samples, or there are 20 illustrations different, or 20 different image selections. So I think it is as well just making them look how the design process or the printing process it is. And I think like as well educate our colleagues or educate ourselves on that process. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of what in manufacturing we kind of try to do too. Get ourselves, you know, really deep into the process and help with some of the simpler decision making. Liz, tell us just about the cycle from the first time you were tapped for Rutgers to the final video we got. You know, give us a sense of scale and how long that is and how how many touches there was involved?
Yeah, so from an architectural standpoint, my team started much earlier than I did. I want to say they probably started in the fall of 2019. I joined in April 2020, developed all the artwork, and I think I started handing off fabrication art maybe in August, but it went like August, September, October, November, and then doors opened in December 2020, like December 31st. So some of these things, BluEdge had a lot of time to print, and probably most of them they really didn't. Like we had to turn artwork around pretty fast because it was a big decision-making process. So really all in for me, it was April until December of the same year, with a lot of that stuff happening at the tail end, as it always does in the EGD world.
Yeah, and entertainment follows suit, speed to market, but the communication really helps as a fabricator. And what I mean by that is, it's coming. You stage and orchestrate. You get the presses and you get work off the presses knowing that, hey, this is going to run late. So part of our communication with approval process and color testing, Liz would say, hey, we have time for this? And I would say, not really, but it's important. So we could juggle, right? If we know we were supposed to go to press with Rucker Skins, on a Monday, but I still want to get approvals, I'll switch and move and take goods that weren't going to be on that press and kind of juggle. That is a big part of getting it right. And it makes it really, really important for us to be engaged with not only the aesthetics, but the schedule and the budget as well. We have to wrap up, but I will say that my dear friends make us look really good, and I appreciate all three of you in taking out time. This was very, very nice and very informative. We have a way to contact us. There's a barcode. If any of our friends on the webinar would like a sample packet from us once a month, come and let us know. Click on that barcode and you will get new substrates that manufacturers are bringing to us, some cool things that we got to do for some partners, and for designers, it could spark ideas. Quite honestly, we are tasked to execute your vision, not to interpret it, not to kind of move it into printer's ease and say can't. What we're supposed to do is support you and take what you created weeks and months and years ago and bring it to fruition. And that's where really good partnerships with talented people make really, really pretty projects that stand the test of time. Thank you again, ladies, and thank you everybody for joining us. Any questions, all our emails are out there. Feel free to reach out to us. Have a wonderful summer. Stay safe.